All right, y'all, 7.8, last section, Unit 7. So this is all about sustainable development. And again, the idea of sustainable development, it's a pretty basic concept, but can be hard to make happen. So again, the idea of sustainable development is to be able to produce and get the things that you want now, but not sacrifice resources and other things in the future for future generations that want the same opportunity. So think of, like fishing in a pond. You don't want to catch all of the fish in one year. You want to catch enough fish that you can have some, but then come back the next year and there's plenty of fish there, and the next and the next and the next and the next. And so, you can fish the pond, your child can, their child can, their child can. So that's kind of the idea of sustainability. So when we look at this, there's going to be three different things that we're looking at. And again, this is, sustainability principles relate to an impact industrial and spatial development. So we're going to be looking at a couple of different things: natural resource depletion, mass consumption, the effects of pollution, and the impact of climate change. That won't take but a second. How ecotourism is a practice that is growing and can be used to help sustain certain environments. And then we'll look at, I've got a video that we're going to watch within this video on the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. And so some of the stuff that the United Nations is trying to do and to help other countries. So let's go ahead and get started. So when we look at sustainable development, all right, this is kind of, the idea of the things that we're faced with. And again, this is, looking at it with this ESPN thing, the economic, social, political, and environmental. I guess that's an EN there. And so, if we look at this, we've got three big factors, little Venn diagram here. And so some of the environmental requirements to being sustainable, some of the social requirements and economic requirements. And so, the sustainability practices, they do need to be equitable in terms of fairness to others. They have to be bearable, meaning, we could, you know, get rid of a lot of pollution. We could just turn off the factories and be done with it. We could stop pumping oil and be done with it. But all of those, the cost would be so vast. If we had to turn off all the electricity, that that's not good. Okay, that would not be bearable. And so, we have to figure out a way to make it bearable, figure out a way to make it equitable for everybody. We have to make it viable. And so, we could do certain things, but it's got to be cheap enough to be able to do it. You can't tell a company, hey, produce your product this way. It's going to cost you 20 times as much, but you need to do it anyway because that's just not viable. And if you make them do it, they're just going to shut down, and now you got a bunch of unemployed people. And so, it's a balancing act for sure, taking into all these considerations. And so the idea is to try to balance all of these to create a sustainable way of moving forward, right? And so, you can see down here some of the problems that come along with the way that we do things, pollution, mass consumption, all that. So let's take a quick look. So when we talk about some of the problems that sustainability is hopefully going to address, natural resource depletion. Here we have overfishing of the seas, deforestation, the pollution of the air, using up fresh water. This is the Aral Sea that we talked about in Kazakhstan, that they kind of drained out. And so, the using up those resources, and some of these are renewable, some not, but it does lead to these things: loss of biodiversity, poor health outcomes, atmospheric changes, and so it can have this big impact. And so, to try to create sustainable measures to deal with all of these natural resource depletions is key, and technology is definitely part of that. But anyway, we also have the problem of mass consumption. So I put a couple of little cartoons in here. Here's this is mass consumption. I mean, here's all these cars that have been used and thrown away. Here's all these computers that have been used and thrown away. This is a cartoon kind of showing, what's happened. Then it's like if we have a problem with a TV or something, we take it to the repair shop, they fix it. Today, if we have a problem with a TV, we just dump it and buy a new one because they've gotten relatively cheaper. And so, the repair shop's closed, but we're just tossing everything out. That's kind of the sense of it. And again, here's another little cartoon. Let's just get through this first aisle, then we'll discuss your impulse buying. We love stuff. We love to buy a lot of stuff. in the developed world. And I think just, lots of people like their stuff. Uh, and so how we deal with that in a sustainable manner is important. Looking at the effects of pollution, you can see here's some water pollution. This might be the Ganges River. I'm not exactly sure, but uh, pollution, water pollution, air pollution. If you're living in this city, this is one of the cities in China, and this is on one of their worst days, and we've had days like this in our past. But so there's obviously environmental consequences to pollution, but there's huge health costs to pollution as well. And so you can see this is magnitude of the impact. So millions of people have lung function issues, cardiac problems, inflammation, and then we kind of go up the list of severity. All right, leading up to respiratory symptoms, more medication, asthma attacks. Remember, all of this costs money. And so we're doing things in a manner that doesn't take into account all of these extra costs, doctor visits, missing school, missing work, ER visits, hospital admissions, heart attacks, all of these things are extremely expensive. And so, in the production process, and we've talked about this before, it's the idea of externalities, that, the hamburger that costs $4.50, it doesn't take into account all of the external costs that are associated with that burger. And so, these are some of those effects of pollution in terms of health, which is a huge thing. All right. And then the impact of climate change, obviously, here we have with natural disasters kind of thing. And so again, this is saying longer droughts. Climate change, we've always had droughts and we've always had flooding and we've always had hurricanes and we've always had heat waves and things like that. But climate change is making those worse than they were before. Okay, and so they're going to have bigger impacts. And then over here on this other one, potential effects of climate change, definite effects on health, species and natural areas, coastal areas. I mean, you can pause this and read it. Agriculture, crop yields go down, irrigation demands go up. So now we have water resource problems, forest composition, I mean, you name it. And so, uh, yeah, when we talk about climate change, it's not just one singular thing, it is multitudinal. All right. Now, one way that one sustainable practice that they're working on that's become popular is this idea of ecotourism. All right. And so, ecotourism, and here's the definition: tourism based on natural environments, often environments that are threatened by looming industrialization or development, that frequently helps to protect the environment in question while also providing jobs for local population. So imagine if you wanted to go on a safari in Africa and see the wild animals in Africa. Those dollars that you're spending in Africa are extremely important in helping to protect the environment and providing jobs for the local population. All right. And so when we talk about ecotourism, the world is a beautiful place and people will pay a lot of money to go see these beautiful places. And so, it's the sense that the things that we have, we need to what they call monetize them to help protect them. And so it's creating this idea that these things that we have a dollar value, and let's have everybody realize that there is value in leaving stuff alone. If we can show, it's kind of like wild animals. If you can show that something is worth more alive than it is dead, then people will tend to protect it more. All right, and we'll talk about the wild animal thing in just a bit. But here's some of the principles of ecotourism, and I'm not going to read all these off to you, but they want to minimize physical, social, behavioral, and psychological impacts, uh, build environmental and cultural awareness. Uh, Here I am reading them off to you, but you can kind of get the idea from this. So again, it is trying to preserve a pristine area and allow people to come in, and so those people in the local community where that area is can benefit from the dollars coming in. And so, if we're talking about the safari, if a group of people build a small hotel, that people can come in and stay at, then all the people that the hotel employs, that's a big deal. All right. And so here, this would be some examples of ecotourism. Obviously, Central America here, going on a safari there, Rwanda, eco tours, and it's just, again, trying to preserve the natural beauty of something for people to come in and see it and spend their dollars there, because those dollars are critical to these to the people who are in that area. Otherwise, they may not protect it quite as much. And so let's look real quick at the impacts of ecotourism. So it can have a negative impact because if everybody starts to show up to a place, you might start to see stuff like this. Hotel chains and fast food chains start to spring up around the area. That's not terribly pretty. You might see roads going through natural areas that kind of diminish, the beauty of that. Resorts or theme parks, ski slopes, trails get put through all this stuff. You might end up with a lot more litter and pollution, so some environmental degradation. So those are some things that have to be watched out for in ecotourism. But here's the upside: conserves natural resources. It promotes the exotic scenery, wildlife, beaches, mountains, all that kind of stuff. Preservation of historic buildings and sites, because if people might want to come see it, so instead of tearing it down to put up a McDonald's, uh, people will come and see this old historic building. It can sustain an indigenous lifestyle and keep the culture and the art and the crafts and things like that of that indigenous lifestyle alive and well. Okay, and so there are definitely some benefits, but there's some things to be careful of. Uh, and this is one of the more controversial things dealing with ecotourism. So this was an article in New York Times from 2017, I believe it was. And so there's this thought out there that if you make it legal to hunt big game, so it could be lions or elephants or rhinos, there is a debate today as to whether that is beneficial for the animals overall as a species. Obviously, not the ones that you shoot. But here's kind of how this works. So, somebody from the US can go and pay, let's just put it around $50,000 to go over to Africa to kill an elephant. Okay. And so right now, I believe it's still illegal to bring that back. So, but I know lions, you can do this, and they're around 50,000 as well. And so you can go over and hunt. And so here's the argument for it. They're saying, look, if we can put a price tag, let's say that you own the land, you can't own the elephants, but they did give private land ownership to people in this area. And so let's say that you own the land that some of these elephants are on, and if somebody were to come over and pay $50,000 to kill an elephant, then the incentive for you as a landowner is to make sure that these elephants breed and create more elephants. Okay, and so with this money, if it goes, and so this can support the local community around this. So they're coming in, people are coming in, staying in a place, they're eating the food, and they're using the services of that area. And so it does promote more local employment as long as the money gets down to that level. All right. And so, you know, they can use this money to help promote the species. And so, you wouldn't kill a young male or female elephant. They try and make it to where it's an older elephant, and so there's some stipulations here. Now, this is, in terms of numbers, this has worked in a couple of countries to where the elephant populations have gone up. In other countries, it hasn't worked. This is a very controversial thing, to say, hey, let's kill this animal so we can save the species. All right, because they've done other studies that say, look, this money it doesn't go down to the local area; it goes to these companies that run these safaris, or not a safari, but these hunting trips. And so, it depends on how the program is done, and you can find examples of where this has worked relatively well, and you can definitely find examples of where this has not worked. And so some people just look at it and say killing an elephant is wrong, period, regardless of whether it actually helps the overall elephant population or not. And so, but this is something that's going on. And again, it's the idea of making this elephant worth, putting a value on the elephant. So there's an incentive for people in the area to make sure there are plenty of them. And again, different studies showing different effects, but this is just something that's out there. All right, so the last little bit is looking at what we call the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and it does do things like small-scale finance and public transportation projects. But let's take a look at the 17 real quick. Then I have a video and then we're done. So they want to eradicate poverty, get rid of hunger, increase health and well-being, quality education for everybody, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry innovation and infrastructure, reduce inequality, sustainable cities and communities. So there's the sustainable thing, responsible consumption and production. That one's tough. Climate action. So be caretaker of the climate. Life below water. So looking out for marine life, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions in partnerships for the goals. So, when we look at the UN development goals, sustainable development goals, these are ambitious, they're aspirational, but they're good. Who can argue with any of these? And so let's take a look at this quick video. It's about 7 minutes and then we will be done. This is just trying to put these development goals in some real world context. All righty. So here we go.
Our journey begins more than 14,000 kilometers from the United Nations in Papua New Guinea as we look at the Sustainable Development Goals, which aim to transform our world by 2030. The 17 goals were adopted at the UN General Assembly by 193 member states in 2015. The objective: produce a set of universal goals that meet urgent social, economic, and environmental challenges facing the world. What makes these goals different? Each goal is dependent on the other goals. These goals are universal, integrated, and transformative. The last goal focuses on the importance of partnership between the government, the UN, development partners, civil society, faith-based organizations, youth groups, communities, and the private sector. Despite the many challenges of life in Papua New Guinea, the government and people of PNG are making great efforts toward the SDGs. Progress will be made only if we work together. We begin with one woman working tirelessly to feed her family. Her name is Susan, and today Susan is in a field tending to her crops as her husband fishes nearby in the ocean. For Susan, her 4 daughters, and husband, their crops are at risk as the sea level rise affects the salt level in the soil. This means less access to a variety of food and a greater risk of stunting for her daughters. Susan says she's seen a rise in the sea level and also in the sea temperature here. There are fewer fish, she says. There is no reliable transport infrastructure here either, so the family often skips going to health facilities, even though malaria is rampant. Children are often delivered at home without acknowledging the risk.
Two to 3 hours.
Making matters worse, diarrhea is common here, as proper sanitation practices are rare. Susan has only an 8th grade education. Secondary school is not really an option for her family, as there is no secondary school nearby. Another big concern for her: clean water. The encroaching sea is threatening their water supply with salt. For Susan and her family, she says, their big dream is simply surviving, which has become increasingly difficult. Moving to Enga Province, we meet Benny Pundi, a subsistence farmer with 2 wives and 6 children. Health problems are common here because the nearest hospital is far away. Farmers here rely on rain, so their food production is very unstable. The current rain pattern has changed, and it's unpredictable, making it difficult to plant seeds at exactly the right time. They're limited to a few varieties of crops, so their children are often stunted. These same children must also walk great distances to school and rarely attend beyond early primary.
Yeah. School close to you. School Muripia. I'm taking 1 hour 30 minutes.
All of the children help work in the fields. There are no close markets to sell their produce, so everything they grow, they eat. They have no source of outside income. Benny's family uses a basic pit latrine and has no electricity or running water. The family relies on firewood cut from the nearby forest. As for the future, Benny wants only two things.
Me lucky one plus school now, one plus house. I'm told me lucky stuff in Jello Plus.
And finally, we move to the capital of Port Moresby and the 5 Mile Settlement.
My name is Dorothy Robert. My age is 39 and I have 6 children.
Dorothy runs a small food stand she sets up outside her house each morning.
I made my barbecue, selling drinks, sausages, sometimes selling betel nuts.
They have no garden, so they need to purchase all their food. Dorothy is the only person working, so the family is always suffering from a lack of cash. Her husband has other wives and many other children. He gives her no money. This means her children often skip meals, which leads to stunting. There is also no money to buy school supplies, school uniforms, and lunch, so some of the children don't attend school. In the settlement, everyone uses pit toilets, and washing areas are in poor condition when they exist at all. And the water is cut off frequently. Violence against women is a serious issue here. A 2015 Overseas Development Institute article estimates that 2 in 3 women in Papua New Guinea have experienced gender-based violence in their lifetime. Papua New Guinea has the highest prevalence of gender-based violence in the Western Pacific region. Sadly, Dorothy too has experienced violence in her life.
Domestic violence is very commonly in the settlement.
Dorothy feels trapped by poverty. She has dreams, but worries they won't become reality unless her situation improves.
My dream for my children is I want them to be educated, to earn their own living.
These are the stories of real people's lives in Papua New Guinea. The people know that they have rights and are resilient in the face of the adversity they face. Their lives are directly linked to the Sustainable Development Goals. The SDGs are about every single person's life and improving each life in a powerful way. Betterment of a nation starts with the betterment of one person's and one family's life. The SDGs are the milestone for 15 years. 15 years is an accumulation of days. When you live a life, you live a day. So each single day is important if we want a change. Time alone cannot bring us a change. We are the ones who can and must bring that change.
All right, so again, I just wanted to have it to where you could see some of these goals in action, some of the things that they were designed to address. So I do believe that is it. So y'all take care.